Hello everybody, my name is Joanna, and ever since I got into K-pop, I've always had a big fascination with older K-pop groups. Groups that were active before I even knew Korea was a country, groups that debuted when I was learning how to talk. I think this is due to my excessive nostalgia towards the late 2000s and early 2010s, the period in my life before the horrors began, middle school. So even though I only got into K-pop in middle school, I still managed to become a fan of second generation K-pop girl groups. I say only girl groups because I'm a girl group stan, although I really love SHINee and Replay is the best song to ever exist. I don't make the rules. My favorite second generation group is Girls' Generation, as I in fact
Yeah,
like Girls'
I like girls.
Generation. But I also have always liked one of their main rivals at the time, the Wonder Girls.
It's the first in the pop.
And the Wonder Girls, we're back.
And imagine my surprise when I learned that they had an original Nickelodeon movie released in 2012, in which not only did they speak English but they recorded English versions of their music and then also made English music for. Originally, this video was going to be a shorter one about the Wonder Girls movie. I was only going to do a brief summary of what the movie was about and then laugh a little bit about it because it's quite funny. And I would talk about how much I love it despite it being very bad. But rewatching it made me realize that we can have some interesting conversations about the break of K-pop into the West and why the Wonder Girls movie unfortunately failed at helping the Wonder Girls do that. Or more like I began writing the script and then it became very long, like it usually does. So this video will be comprehensive to both non-K-pop and K-pop fans. And I will not tolerate any slander towards any group here, okay? Let's all be nice to each other. Let us all channel the energy of this picture that brought all third gen together, you know? This is a hate-free space, and yeah, I have a lot to talk about today, so I feel like we should probably start this video. I think this should be fun, so let's go. Hello everybody, so my name is Joanna, but I also like to be positive sometimes. Part 1, antecedents. Antecedents. I don't know how to say this. I wrote a word in my script and I don't know how to pronounce it. Part 1, antecedents. Not me talking like I'm about to give you an explanation of how World War I happened. A. The second generation of K-pop and the expansion to other countries. For those who aren't that familiar with K-pop terminology, I suppose you are probably kind of confused about this whole generations terminology. Basically, K-pop history is usually defined into different generations based on certain events and industry trends. The determination of when a generation in K-pop begins or ends is a little controversial. Some people go by the decades, but I don't particularly like this system. So I'll explain briefly how I define each K-pop generation. So I'm going to leave in the description the references I used to write this part, and there are some books, some of them by actual Korean people, which I'm clearly not, as you can see. I'm Brazilian, hi. But anyway, you can read those if you're interested to learn more about the K-pop industry and the Korean music industry in general, which I think is a very fascinating topic. But anyway, the first generation begins with jojoojoj and boys in 1992. An important part of Korean music culture are the music shows, which are these shows where artists will go perform their songs in order to promote them, and they get a certain score, and the song with the biggest score wins a music show win. Nowadays, the music scores are based on stuff like digital sales, fan voting, this type of thing, but back in the day it was decided by a jury made of, famous people. And those people were mostly middle-aged artists. So it's not a surprise that when jojoojoj and boys showed up in a music show in 1992 and sang their song I Know, that was inspired by hip-hop and New Jack Swing and all these American influences, and they sang that and they rapped and they had organized choreography, the jury ended up giving them the lowest scores possible. But this meant basically nothing to their success, as I Know became a huge hit. It sold to more than 1,700,000 copies. And keep in mind that at the time, the population in South Korea was of 40 million people, so that is a lot of people buying those CDs, you know? It was the best-selling song for 17 consecutive weeks in the country, and it completely changed the trajectory of Korean popular music for two reasons. The first one is that it incentivized new Korean pop music artists to incorporate more and more Western influences into their music. Now, it's not like there weren't any Western or American influences in South Korean music. That would be a lie. But now it was a lot more present, especially with people now adding lines in English to their songs, which wasn't that common before. And the second one is that one of the members of jojoojoj and boys, Young Hyung-suk, went on to found the company YG Entertainment after Soteji and Boys disbanded in 1996. And if you are into K-pop, you know that YG is one of the 3 biggest entertainment companies in K-pop. The other 2 that are very important, these 3 companies were very important to shape the way the K-pop industry was going to move forward and the history of K-pop itself, are JYP Entertainment and SM Entertainment. I explained this a little bit in my video about my least favorite books. Watch it if you're interested to understand why I was talking about the K-pop industry in the video about least favorite books. But the K-pop industry is built by companies that scout trainees, which are people that go to the company to train singing and acting and dancing in order to maybe get chosen to debut as a K-pop artist.
가수가 되고 싶어.
Any one of these hopefuls could be the next big thing in K-pop.
This system was inspired by the American music industry in the 60s and the Japanese idol music culture, and it was brought to Korea by Lee Soo-man, who founded SM Entertainment in 1995. Okay, the way you actually pronounce his name is like Lee Soo-man. I have a really hard time saying the A's like this because in Portuguese, when you have an A followed by an N, you make a nasal sound. So instead of saying Suman, we say Sumang. And so I have a really hard time saying his name properly. I'm sorry to this man. Before we continue, I have to say that I do think the K-pop industry has its issues and that we have to discuss them. But I feel like the way a lot of people talk about it can feel pretty orientalistic. This video isn't about this topic, so I'm not going to get too much into it. But I recommend Cheyenne Ling's video, Nuance in K-pop, the good, the bad, and the problematic, if you're interested in a discussion about the actual problems of the K-pop industry and the way we talk about them. Okay, so back to Lee Soo-man. SM Entertainment is basically the most important K-pop company to date because it was essentially what began K-pop as we know it of today. It was also the first company to debut boy and girl groups, the first ever K-pop boy group by the standards of what we understand a K-pop boy group as of today, you know, energetic dances, upbeat dance, songs, this type of thing, was made by SM Entertainment and debuted in 1996, and it is H.O.T, and they released the song Candy, and it's a bop. A lot of people came to know the song because NCT Dream released a cover of it, and it is so good. Go listen to it. It's peak 90s fun. I love the song. Anyway. And then in 1997, they debuted as SES, which was not the first girl group because the girl group Baby Vox happened 4 months before them. But Baby Vox wasn't as popular in the beginning as SES was. So SES was basically the first girl group to really hit it in the mainstream. And they debuted with I'm Your Girl, which is another really great song. Go listen to it if you don't know it. It isn't really a surprise that K-pop really began in the late 90s as the South Korean government began to make investments towards the Ministry of Culture to invest in K-pop after the 1997 Asian financial crisis in order to build the country's influence through music. This is called building a soft power, and we see now that it has worked for South Korea. Anyways, to conclude, the first generation was all about establishing K-pop not only as a genre, but as an industry in South Korea. There were a few attempts at venturing into other markets, like H.O.T releasing an album in Mandarin, or SES constantly trying to break into the Japanese market, to varying degrees of success. But at the end of the day, the first generation was about establishing K-pop in Korea itself. And then everything changed when BoA attacked. I consider the ending of the first and thus the beginning of the second generation the year of 2002. Why, you may ask? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about BoA. BoA is a female K-pop solo artist who released her first album, ID Peace Be, in 2000 when she was only 13 years old. Her first Korean releases were occasionally successful, but her company, SM Entertainment, had bigger plans for her career. BoA dropped out of school and began learning Japanese, and so in 2002 she released her first Japanese album, Listen to My Heart. Listen to My Heart was a huge hit. It sold more than 1 million copies, and it was the first ever album by a Korean singer to top the Oricon Albums Chart, which is the albums chart in Japan. This is a huge thing because if you know anything about Korean and Japanese history, you know these countries don't really get along. And this really opened the doors for other artists to go promote in Japan and release music in Japanese, which was really important because I don't know if you know this, but Japan actually has the second largest music industry in the world. Nowadays, I don't even think that much about K-pop idols releasing songs in Japanese. Like, it's just a given that at some point they are going to release something in Japanese. But this really was because of BoA who opened these doors. And she went on to have an extremely successful career in Japan throughout the 2000s. It is really thanks to her that K-pop idols nowadays have such an access to the Japanese market, you know? Besides BoA, TVXQ, a boy group that was also under SM Entertainment, they debuted in 2003. They were also really popular in Japan. There was a point, I'm pretty sure this is true, their fandom was the biggest fandom in the world. They had the biggest fandom in the world. Baby Fox, the first ever girl group that I briefly mentioned earlier, had some hit songs in China and Thailand, and they also were the first ever girl group to perform in North Korea, really paving the way for Red Velvet right there. Basically, the beginning of the second generation really was all about spreading K-pop all over Asia. Now, K-pop was not only a Korean phenomenon, it was all over the continent. To me, the second generation ends in 2012, and so begins the third generation with, you guessed it, Gangnam Style. With the advance of K-pop to Asia in general and Asian markets in Western countries, it was only a matter of time until attempts were made to break K-pop into the Western market. As you might remember, I said that the second largest music industry was in Japan, and that is true because the first one is actually the US, the American music industry. If there's one thing that capitalism likes, it's a bigger market. So while no K-pop acts really broke into the West in second gen, put a pin in that, we'll come back later, there were definitely attempts. What really ended up changing the shape of the industry though was Gangnam Style, a song by solo artist Psy, who was active since the early 2000s and was popular in Korea, went absolutely viral. Everyone knew the dance. This was playing everywhere. Okay, I have a personal story with this song. I'm going to indulge in a memory from my elementary school days, but when I was in the third grade in 2013, I used to be in a school that used to put on like musicals every year, and instead of doing like one person is one character, it would be like the whole class is a single character, and instead of saying lines like a normal play, since a bunch of kids were playing the same character, we would sing a song and do a dance according to what characters we were playing, and it was usually a pop song chosen by our teachers that didn't speak English, so that was pretty interesting. When I was in the third grade, my school was doing The Wizard of Oz, and my class was divided, so the girls were the Wicked Witch of the West. And guess what song we sang, guys? Bad Romance by Lady Gaga. No, my teachers didn't speak English. Our performance was terrible. This is my memory. But anyway, the boys in our class were playing the Scarecrow, and the song they chose was Gangnam Style, and they did their own choreography with like Scarecrow moves, like they were a little bit robotic, but not like a robot, because you know what I'm talking about. And so they did their own dance, and it got so popular in my school that my school would like play Gangnam Style at the end of class, and we would all do the dance that the boys from my class danced at this performance. And so yeah, this is a very vivid memory I have. Anyway, back to what I was talking about. It's easy to understand why Gangnam Style was a hit the way it was. Besides the fun, quirky music video that was very on par with the type of humor that was popular at the time, and the fact that it went viral on YouTube, which was at its peak as a platform at the time. It's an extremely catchy song that it's easy to memorize even though it's mostly Korean, and the song attached to it is very catchy. Everybody could dance Gangnam Style, which I think is amazing. If you are into K-pop, you probably agree that upbeat music with catchy dances are like a staple of the genre, so it makes sense to me that it was a hit. And it makes sense to me that this was the way a lot of people in the West found out what K-pop was at all. This was probably how I found out what it was. Although still not mainstream, the third generation was what brought K-pop to the consciousness of people in Western countries. Especially after the explosion of BTS in 2016, I feel like a lot of people came to understand what K-pop was after that. This was the time I became a fan, and third gen is still my favorite. When it comes to the beginning of the fourth generation, this is when we reach some murky waters. I think it began in 2019, but I'm not really going to get too deep into this now. First of all, because it's not relevant to this video, but also because I think fourth generation hasn't really ended yet. No matter how much companies want to insist the fifth generation has actually begun so that they can claim records to their rookie groups. Yeah, in case you're not into K-pop, there's this thing where people would be like, oh, this song is the best-selling song by an artist of the third generation, and K-pop companies really wanted their new groups to like hold these titles, so they like basically forced fifth generation to begin. They began writing like news saying, oh, fifth generation has begun, so that they can say, oh, this group is the first fifth generation group to achieve these. And I don't really like this because I don't think there has been a clear difference in the industry between fourth and supposed fifth generation to define a new one, you know? But I'm not the authority on this. So, but yeah, the fourth generation really is marked by K-pop culture being mainstream in the West now. Back when I became a fan, if I talked to people about K-pop, they probably would be sort of aware of what it was and they would know Gangnam Style, but they wouldn't know any other groups or songs. Maybe they would know BTS and that was about it. And it was cringe to be a K-pop fan. I didn't tell anyone I was one because I had already enough reasons to be bullied. I didn't need another one. Nowadays, I feel like everyone has heard at least one K-pop song that is in Gangnam Style. Everyone can name at least like 2 or 3 K-pop groups. And I just feel like it's less embarrassing to be a K-pop stan nowadays. Like, my 12-year-old cousin is currently obsessed with Stray Kids. Kind of the way I was when I was 14, if I say so myself. My aunt broke her arm, and my cousin wrote in her cast, Hyunjin's wife has been here. And she's popular in her class, she's not bullied, and this would have never happened in my time. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I think it is good that less children are being bullied because of things they like for racist and orientalistic reasons, you know? I just mean to show anecdotally that K-pop is at least much more known and understood in Western countries, including Brazil, which is where I'm from. And we see more and more of K-pop idols participating in American Music Awards, in events in like the Met Gala. They participate in music festivals like Coachella. So yeah, pretty mainstream. You might be wondering why I decided to explain this whole thing when this video is supposed to be about the Wonder Girls movie. We'll get there, I promise, but what you need to understand is that the expansion of K-pop into the US was a gradual process, and the Wonder Girls movie was one of the first attempts at that. As I said, K-pop fans existed in Western countries, especially in Asian diaspora in Western countries, but they only began to really grow in number and expand after the third and fourth generations. Okay, with all this historical context, we can go back to the Wonder Girls. B. The birth of the Wonder Girls and their first attempt at an international career. The Wonder Girls were the first ever girl group formed by JYP Entertainment, which I mentioned as one of the most important K-pop companies in history. They debuted in February of 2007 with a song, Irony, that has a very cool music video that is clearly kind of like Bratz inspired. Very mid-2000s. I would have loved this as a kid. Back in the day, they were composed of 5 members: Sunye, Yoon, Sunmi, Sohee, and Hyuna. Yes, that Hyuna. But Hyuna ended up leaving the group after their debut because she had some health issues and her parents were worried. And yes, their parents, because everyone in this group was really young. Sunye and Yoon, the oldest girls, were 17 to turn 18, and all the other girls were 14 to turn 15. They were kids. I'm older than all of them were at debut. Oh, by the way, this is the first video I'm making as a 19-year-old. I turned 19 2 weeks ago from when I'm filming this, but it's going to be like probably 3 weeks by the time I post it. So yeah, this changed nothing in my life, I'm just telling you. In order to substitute Hyuna, a new member was added, and it was Yubin. This was right before they released their breakout single, Tell Me, which you probably have heard, not only because it went viral in Asia in 2007, creating what was called the Tell Me fever, that was basically everyone recreating the dance, the catchy dance that the song had, but also this song went viral on TikTok last year. As per my sister says, I don't have TikTok, so I'm not really aware, but she said it was viral, so. And the part that went viral was Yubin's rap, so we have to be thankful that she was added to the group at some point. The main reasons why Tell Me was so popular back in the day was the easy to replicate choreo that, as I said, created the Tell Me virus. At the time, everyone was doing this dance everywhere, and it still is. Like, it was really popular in like variety shows for idols to cover the song. But also because of the killing part. Basically, a killing part in a K-pop song is what we call a part that is supposed to be catchy and like attention grabbing, but is in the chorus. In the song it was, so he's, I'm never going to do this again in my life. Anyway, she has like this part that was really cute and people liked, so this went viral too. I wonder if the killing part of the song nowadays is considered to be Yubin's rap. I don't know. Anyway, in 2008, the Wonder Girls' popularity in Korea continued to grow a lot, especially with the release of So Hot, which you might know thanks to the Blackpink cover, but it was also a huge hit on its own right back in the day. And the one and only Nobody. Nobody really did change these girls' lives' trajectories. But before we talk about Nobody, I need you guys to understand how big the Wonder Girls were in Korea at that time. They were building up to become one of the most popular Korean girl groups of all time. And you guys have to keep in mind that at this point, girl groups were kind of dead. I talked a little bit about this again in my Worst Books I've Read video, but ever since the major first-gen girl groups had disbanded in the early 2000s, there really had not been that many popular girl groups in Korea anymore. Tiffany from Girls' Generation, my favorite second-gen group, talks about how when she debuted as Girls' Generation in 2007, there really weren't that many girls and girl groups in the music shows when she would promote. And Girls' Generation, but also the Wonder Girls, really helped to bring them back.
When Girls' Generation first started, there weren't that many girl bands. And then came this huge era of girl bands after, which is I'm proud to say Wonder Girls and Girls' Generation started.
Yeah. So yeah, the Wonder Girls were really important to bring back the popularity of girl groups in Korea. And okay, back to Nobody. The song Nobody, released in 2008, was also really popular all over Asia. Thanks again to the catchy dance, had a funny music video where JYP really needed to make a cameo for some reason. But what made the song so important is that for the first time, the Wonder Girls incorporated an aesthetic, or as we call in K-pop lingo, a concept that would define them going forward: retro. Nobody was this fun electro-pop song inspired by Motown and soul from the 60s. And the music video reflects that, with all the girls wearing these sparkly retro dresses and these hairstyles that have aged terribly. And there you have it. It's the end of 2008 and the Wonder Girls are dominating not only Korea but many other Asian countries. At the Mnet KM Music Awards, Music Festival Awards, this is a very long title for a music award show, they win awards for Song of the Year, Best Music Video, and Best Female Group. At the 18th Seoul Music Awards, they win Artist of the Year, which is a daesang, which is basically it's the most important prize of the night. And they were all super young and super early into their careers. They really had a really bright future in Asia going forward. But JYP Entertainment had plans, okay? They wanted to push the Wonder Girls into uncharted territory to the company up until this point. They wanted to send them to the West. I mentioned that no K-pop group in the second gen was really successful at breaking into the Western market at the time. But after signing up with the Creative Artists Agency in late 2008, it really seemed like the Wonder Girls would do it. They began their first concert tour in 2009, touring in countries like Malaysia, Thailand, China, where they were all really popular, and also the US. But what really marked an advance in their careers in America was when they served as an opening act for none other than the Jonas Brothers. Yeah, they opened 45 shows for their 2009 tour, Jonas Brothers World Tour 2009. They also went on the Wendy Williams show, and people still talk about how weird they styled Sunmi's hair that day. This was all built up for the release of their first English full album that was preceded by an English version of the song Nobody. Nobody charted in number 76 on the Billboard Hot 100, which was a huge deal because this was the first ever time that a Korean song charted. Everything was looking good for them. Their English album was set to be released in February of 2010, but then the plans had to be scrapped because Sunmi ended up leaving the group in early 2010. And they went back to Korea. Sunmi said she wanted to go back to her studies as she had dropped out of school to debut in the Wonder Girls. So had Sohee. When they went to the US to begin their American careers, they had to drop out of high school, so I understand why she would want to go back to study. She also said in a 2017 interview that idol life was very busy and very structured, and she just fell out of passion with that, which it's okay, it happens. These are valid reasons for her to not continue doing something that wasn't being fulfilling. Not only that, but as much as the Wonder Girls were doing well, their living conditions while in America really weren't the best. First of all, they were sent to the country in student visas, which first of all is really questionable, but also didn't grant them essential things like health insurance. None of them spoke English that well, so they weren't really able to communicate with people, which must have been really isolating. And lastly, they were being severely overworked. They were flying from Korea to the US to other countries to tour, and they were touring, and they were preparing music, and they were taking English lessons, and they were practicing, and this is all a lot. And so JYP Entertainment gives a break to their Western dreams of breaking into America and takes them back to Korea, where they used to be huge. See, the Wonder Girls go back to Korea, but they still have a dollar and a dream. You might notice I said used to. By 2010, when they go back to Korea with a new member to replace Sunmi, Hyening, the public has now moved on from the Wonder Girls. While the Wonder Girls were busy touring with the Jonas Brothers, Girls' Generation released a little song called G. Actually, G came out a couple months before they left for the US, but it was still a huge hit, and it's weird how G is also coming to topic in this video, and I also talked about it in my least favorite books video. G propelled Girls' Generation to stardom in Korea, and so the title that was the Wonder Girls of the nation's favorite girl group was transferred. It's not necessarily that the Wonder Girls weren't popular anymore. They released a new song with 3 language versions, Korean, English, and Chinese, called Two Different Tears. Two Different Tears. This sounds like a tongue twister to me. Two Different Tears. In May, that went on #1 in Korea and went on to sell 2 million digital copies there, so it's not like they were flopping or anything, far from it. They also toured in Canada that year, good for them. However, JYP Entertainment is still obsessed with the idea of breaking them into the West. And so they spent the year of 2011 preparing their debut full album in English and also working on a little side project, the Wonder Girls movie. Yes, the said movie that this video was supposed to be about before I began yapping about K-pop history. Before the movie premieres, they released a song The DJ Is Mine, a song featured in it, and now we are in February 2nd, 2012, the day the Wonder Girls movie, fully in English in its glorious 41 minutes, premieres on Teen Nick. Let's talk about it. Chapter 2, The Wonder Girls, the movie, the summary. The movie begins with the girls performing one of their original English songs made for this movie in their American album called Like Money, and it is a bop. We also have introduction cards with each one of the girls' names, and it seems like in this movie some of them are using nicknames for stage names because it's probably easier to pronounce, so I'm going to call them by their new stage names in this movie, just so you understand. Sun is Sunye, Yoon becomes Yeni, Yubin is still Yubin, so he's still Sohee, but Hating is being called Lim, and so these are their new names for this movie. So then the girls are on a plane and they are in their way to New York City to go perform their first ever tour in America. And so their manager, played by unfortunately the man himself, Park Jin-young, JYP, he tells them that they will have a lot to do once they arrive in New York City. The girls get annoyed because they also want to have fun. So he's like, yeah, sure, you'll work and you might have fun too. And then they say, the Wonder Girls always stick together. And this really hasn't aged well, right?
The Wonder Girls always stick together.
Yeni, aka Yoon, is then watching a video on the plane on a tablet about the Apollo Theater. And then a woman named Betty, who is sitting... Betty! Oh, I just realized I have I'm not going to reach it. I have a plush sheep named Betty. So that's really topical, but I cannot... It's that one thing with the pink hooves. You can see it. Anyway. So yeah, this woman named Betty, sitting beside Yeni, coincidentally says, oh my god, the Apollo. I used to be in a girl group and we used to play at the Apollo. Fun. Yeni gets really excited about this and takes Betty to talk to the other Wonder Girls about this. And they mentioned that they grew up with Motown music and that they would love to perform in the Apollo. When they arrive to their hotel in New York, JYP introduces them to their choreographer Robin and to their driver Michi. And there's the running joke in this movie that Lim, aka Hirim, understands English wrong all the time. She misunderstands what people are saying all the time. And although I do think some of these moments are the only funny moments, like actual funny moments in this movie, I'm also not sure how I feel about that. Especially considering Hirim is the one in this group that speaks English. So that's weird. But anyway.
Y'all ready to get this thing popping?
Ooh, popcorn?
Oh, no, not at all.
So Michi takes them to meet New York tourist attractions, but since the budget of this movie was literally $2, it's a montage. It's not even like a green screen montage. It's bad photoshopped pictures of it. On a completely unrelated note, guys, look at these pictures that I took when I visited Italy. Then the girls ask Michi to take them to the Apollo Theater in the cringiest way possible. An amateur night is happening there. Basically, a bunch of amateur groups compete to see who is the best, I think. And Yeni is like, girls, I think we should participate in this amateur night so that we can prove ourselves to the American audience. But since this is amateur night and they are not amateurs, they come up with a fake name so that they can perform without people recognizing them. And the name they come up with is Asian Invasion.
Give it up for the Asian Invasion!
So yeah, after choosing a new name for their band, they go on stage and perform Nobody, a song by them. And I keep on wondering, like, if someone knew the Wonder Girls, they would know this was them by seeing them perform, you know? Or maybe this person, this hypothetical fan who's there, might have severe facial blindness. And also they don't like the song Nobody, so they heard it like one time and didn't listen to it again and they cannot really recognize it. I don't know, maybe this happened. We'll never know. The girl group performing right after them are the schoolgirls, which you might also know because they also had an extremely low budget made by Teen Nick, and it was produced by Nick Cannon, of all people. Could have been a Nick Cannon. We'll go back to him later. Before they sing their own original song, the schoolgirls actually take a moment to be high school bullies to the Wonder Girls because we need conflict in this movie with girl rivalry. I love that. And they also are pretty racist to them, which isn't fun, but it also renders the best scene out of this movie. So
Stacks, moolah, De Niro.
Robert De Niro, huh?
Really?
the schoolgirls perform, and then it's time to choose which groups are going to be the ones who are going to be competing next week to choose the best group out of all of them. And obviously the schoolgirls and the Wonder Girls get chosen. I mean the Asian invasion. When it's time for the Wonder Girls to go back to their hotel, it's past curfew and JYP wakes up and is like mad at them. So he makes them wake up really early to go practice the next day. After their rehearsals, Yenny asks Michi to take them to a club where the schoolgirls will be performing because she wants to see how they are doing, to know the competition they are going to go against next week in amateur night. And Michi takes them, but they don't have invitations. And then Nick Cannon, the man himself, of all people, shows up and is like, I'm going to the club. And they are like, he doesn't have an invitation either. And the bouncer is like, it's Nick Cannon. And I kept on wondering, what is going on? Why is Nick Cannon in this movie? To be fair, the first time I ever watched this movie, I didn't know who Nick Cannon was. And it turns out that Nick Cannon is in this movie too because he is also the producer of this movie. Yes. He also produced this movie. He really was in his side quest era in the early 2010s, making these tween girl group movies, But yeah, the Wonder Girls are able to enter in the club because they give the bouncer baseball tickets that they had. It was established before that they had these tickets. I just didn't talk about it because I know nothing about baseball. My only reference of baseball is the I Don't Dance scene in High School Musical 2. So at the club, the Wonder Girls see the schoolgirls perform. The schoolgirls are also racist to them. And while the schoolgirls are being racist and, making fun of them, the DJ realizes there's something going on there. I better put a stop to that. And this DJ is called DJ Skills. This is his name, DJ Skills. So after this whole thing happening, DJ Skills, after knowing these girls for like 20 minutes, takes them to a restaurant where they have breakfast for dinner. And then him and Yenny have flirty vibes because we obviously need a romance subplot in the last 20 minutes of the movie. The next day, while they are practicing, Yenny gets way too hard on the girls and she makes them practice these hip-hop moves. They're way too taxing on them. Being tired, the girls end up having a big argument with Yenny, one of those second act conflict fights, because they are supposed to be having fun this tour, but it has all been practicing and working because Yenny wants to win over the schoolgirls and she forgot what it was all about in the beginning. The scene of them fighting while the camera spins around, that's cinema right there. So yeah, the Wonder Girls are not sticking together anymore. What a shock. Also, I find it super funny that we are supposed to agree that Yenny is this super demanding person who's going beyond the girls' limits out of competitiveness, but this has been established 3 minutes ago in the movie. Like, great establishment of conflict, guys. So Yenny is in her sad girl hours in Na Madrugada Abandonada e Não Atende Celular, and she has character development in like a 1-minute montage. She calls Betty, who invites her to go to her house, and before she does that, Yenny leaves letters apologizing to all the Wonder Girls and also is like, meet me at Betty's house. So when they arrive to Betty's house, they all apologize to each other, and Betty makes them soul food, and she makes a terrible pun with soul and soul. That's fine, she tried, I guess.
And I made you something that you might be familiar with, since you're from Seoul, Korea.
What is it?
Soul food.
The girls end up falling asleep after having all this food, and so they wake up and go back to the hotel after their curfew again, and JYP sees them and is like, you girls are grounded. I talked to your parents. Yes, he talked to their parents even though like you're all adults. Yubin is 24 and this guy is like, I talked to your parents. That's pretty funny anyway. And so I talked to your parents and each one of you will have a security guard, and they're all like this buff men. They're supposed to not let them leave their bedrooms. But the Wonder Girls have to go to their final performance in the Apollo. So basically they make this whole plan where Michi gives the security guards a bunch of food and they eat and they fall asleep, I think because they ate too much. a recurring theme in this movie. And this gives the Wonder Girls a chance to run away, and they have a limo waiting for them to take them to the Apollo. But turns out this limo was actually sent by the schoolgirls, by the main mean schoolgirl. Because of that, it's taking them to New Jersey instead of taking them to the Apollo. After admitting to this, like the main mean schoolgirl, the Filipina schoolgirl is like, girls, I think you guys should stop being racist. I am in fact Filipina, in this beautiful act of Asian solidarity, I guess. So after this, the Wonder Girls realize that they are not being taken to the Apollo, so they stop the limo, they leave the limo, and purely coincidentally, there's a bus passing that has a bunch of Asian tourists. And they recognize the Wonder Girls. And so they ask for a ride to the Asian tourist. And they take them to the Apollo. Very convenient. Okay, so JYP realizes they ran away and he tries to enter the Apollo while the schoolgirls are performing, but he's not able to because he doesn't have a ticket. And then it's time for the Wonder Girls to perform, and they perform Be My Baby, my favorite song by the Wonder Girls. 10 out of 10 for me. Before their performance, the schoolgirls actually apologized for being racist to the Wonder Girls. Good thing we got a resolution to the racism arc. Okay, so JYP enters and he sees the Wonder Girls performing and he's like proud of them, so there's that. So at the end, you might remember this was an amateurs competition and the Wonder Girls are just there. So basically they win, but Sun comes up and is like, guys, we are withdrawing from the competition because we are in fact not amateurs. We have been active in an industry for 5 years at this point. And everybody's like, okay then. So the schoolgirls win. JYP invites them to be the opening act for the Wonder Girls tour. So there's that. And he also asks DJ Skills, the man himself, to be the DJ at their tour. And so Yenny and DJ Skills kiss because, of course, we need a straight romance in the last 2 minutes of the movie. It is truly a beautiful conclusion to this beautifully underdeveloped love story. And then the credits roll while the music video of The DJ's Mind featuring the schoolgirls plays. And that's cinema right there. Chapter 3. So the movie doesn't work. Why? A, the movie is bad and low budget, and also no one knows how to act. I think it's pretty clear from the clips I've shown of this movie that it was made probably the cheapest way it could have been. It's only 40 minutes long. There are like 5 sets, being generous. Besides the Wonder Girls, there are like 5 characters who speak. The acting is also terrible from everyone involved, but I don't think this is the Wonder Girls' fault. I think the main thing is that they were acting in a language that they didn't speak, and it's not surprising to me that the actors who felt the most natural in their roles were Haering and JYP, who are both fluent in English. I also don't think Yoon was necessarily bad as like Yenny herself. She had a very generic main girl vibes that I think were okay, but I don't think this is their fault. And a testament to this is Sohee. Sohee was probably the Wonder Girl that had the worst performance in this movie. It's not surprising to me that she only had 5 lines. But only a year after the release of this movie, she began what would become a decently successful acting career in Korea. And she's been on like good stuff and she was good in it. She was in Train to Busan. So I think her acting came off as stiff and weird because of the language barrier. When it comes to the other actors, Crystal M. Harris was the main cast director for this movie and also the main writer. She said in a 2012 interview with Billboard that it was a non-union film, so that means my talent pool was going to be a lot of green actors, and that she saw many very, very interesting auditions. I feel kind of bad for criticizing the actors because it's pretty clear that they had very little experience, and also they probably were paid with what we say in Brazil, a pastel and a caldo de cana. So like, can we really judge them? At least they were really trying, I'll give them that. I did find it funny that Crystal M. Harris also said that Wes Alderholt, the guy who plays DJ Skills, was chosen because he just knew how to smolder the right teen way. This is so funny. Also, to me, he looks like a dollar store version of Kendall from Big Time Rush, and I think this might be because I am a little face blind, so to me, I just imagine Kendall from Big Time Rush when I think about him. And yes, that facial blindness joke back minutes ago was drawn out of personal experience. In the same interview, Wes Alderholt actually said that he wanted to portray a DJ in a good way, so he watched countless hours of DJing on YouTube, and honestly, I congratulate him for sticking to the bit. Besides all of these elements, I also have a problem with the plot itself. It's questionable to me that the whole point of the movie was that these superstars, these Korean pop stars, were huge in Asia, were wanting so much to prove themselves to an American audience, but it feels pretty meta when you think about the fact that this movie was made with the same intent. They wanted to show the Wonder Girls to an American audience. But it feels really sad to me that K-pop as an industry and as a genre as a whole was really washed out in this movie to fit into something American audiences could like, you know? Crystal M. Harris also said that the original script had a lot of jokes that were pretty uncomfortable and kind of stereotypical and racist, and although some of them were still left on the script, I'm glad that she tried her best to make it a more inclusive movie, although I still find it weird that the Wonder Girls talk to each other in English. And I do feel like nowadays, if a movie like this had been made, a lot more effort would be put into actually representing Korean culture, and I would hope they would get like at least one Korean writer for that, which they didn't have in this movie, but okay. Basically, the Wonder Girls movie is not the worst movie to ever exist. And as I said earlier, I actually love it. But at this time, there were many pieces of media depicting, you know, singing characters or groups to children. There was the movie Rags, which I loved as a kid. Kiki Palmer, You Are That Girl. But also, like, still on Nickelodeon, Victoria's, Big Time Rush, and they all had way bigger budgets than the Wonder Girls movie. Like, there was no way the Wonder Girls movie could compete against that. B, there was no promotion and no way to actually watch it. So, the Wonder Girls movie aired on Teen Nick in February 2nd, 2012. And then after that, I couldn't find any records of it airing anytime else. Probably it did air again, but I couldn't find any proof that it did. Besides, it wasn't properly distributed anywhere, not being in any streaming services. There were no DVDs. The Wonder Girls YouTube channel posted some behind-the-scene videos for promotion, and the song The DJ Is Mine was released a couple of weeks earlier to create some hype. But besides that and a few interviews that no child would read, there really wasn't any promotion to this movie.
Passion, music, and rivals.
It got so bad that for a while, the only way to watch this movie was illegally on YouTube, and I think it's still the case. Also, Teen Nick just didn't have the same audience number as the actual Nickelodeon channel, so obviously it was only a small section of the audience that was actually watching this movie. It feels like it was doomed from the start. C. Who is the target demographic? This isn't necessarily a problem with the movie itself, it's just something I want us to reflect on. What was the target demographic right there? To me, it was clearly young girls. Boy and girl groups are usually promoted and targeted to tween girls. I don't mean this as an insult, by the way. I am a 19-year-old who has the Spice Girls on my most listened artists on Spotify. And I don't mean to say that like boys or like other people, like non-binary people, couldn't like girl groups or like that it wasn't popular with older people. That's not what I'm saying, but what I am saying is that the main demographic usually is young girls. And it makes sense to me that this would be an audience that they would be targeting, since the biggest hit of the Wonder Girls in Korea, Tell Me, and a lot of their other songs were these like youthful pop songs that appeal to kids. Their international career began with them opening for the Jonas Brothers, who were popular with tween girls at the time. But then the rest of it makes me a little confused. D. The girls' personalities aren't that well defined. When I was a kid, I used to play wings with my friends. I was Flora because just like Flora, I liked nature. And my twin sister was Musa because just like Musa, she liked music. In 1997, the Spice Girls released their own Polaroid camera, the Spice Cam. In order to promote it, they did a bunch of commercials in which each of the girls took pictures that related to their media-given nicknames. Victoria, aka Posh Spice, posed in this elegant black and white setting. Emma, who was Baby Spice, drew a pacifier and a rattle in her picture. Mel C, who was Sporty Spice, took a picture kicking the air. Eleni B, who was Scary Spice, drew horns, like devil horns, on her pictures. And lastly, Jerry, who's Ginger Spice, took a picture of her ginger hair, I guess. Do you see where I'm going with this? I think it's beneficial for media aimed at little girls to give the characters pretty easily identifiable and relatable stereotypical characteristics and personality traits, because little girls like to play pretend. I wasn't really alive when the Spice Girls were popular, but you can go to the comment section of any of their music videos and there will be comments like, when I was a kid I used to play I was Scary Spice, or when I was a kid I was Baby Spice, or me and my friends played the Spice Girls and I was Scary Spice. I already said Scary Spice, and I was Ginger Spice because I'm a ginger. Because the Spice Girls promoted them according to certain character traits that little girls could relate to, and then buy merch accordingly. And I think that this is something the Wonder Girls movie definitely lacked. Don't get me wrong, the girls, technically speaking, have personality traits. Like, Yubin is the cool girl, Heading is the fun, quirky one, so he likes shopping, Sonia is the mom friend, and Yenny is the generic main girl protagonist. But it wasn't enough. Since this movie is so short, we don't have enough time to define their characteristics well, so it's hard for little girls to actually relate to them. I think this made them lose the biggest marketing tactic they could have used. E. It wasn't dubbed or internationally distribute. I just feel like The Wonder Girls would have done well as a weird movie you watch during summer break at like 3 p.m. when you have nothing else to do and it kind of feels like a fever dream and you get obsessed with it for a couple of weeks and it airs again and you're like, oh my god, this movie again. And then you forget about it after school comes back and then it's just a memory that you have of a very specific summer in your elementary school days. Like, I feel like Sessão da Tarde really lost their opportunity right there, you know? No, but really, I do think this movie could have done well in Latin America. Let me explain why. I do think Latin Americans probably would still have some of the racist and stereotypical prejudice that Americans also probably had with this movie because anti-Asian sentiment is so strong here, unfortunately. Nowadays it's a little less, but at the time it was definitely very present. This was part of the joke. It was part of the reason why Gangnam Style went viral was because it was this funny Asian man singing, which I don't think is really cool. Like, I don't think a punchline of a joke should be this man is Asian. Wow, I was so controversial right there. Revolutionary statement, guys. Racism is bad. But the thing is, this is something that I think a lot of Latin American kids will relate to. But I grew up listening to music I didn't understand at all. When I was a kid, I loved all the Nickelodeon TV shows, international ones that they would air. I watched the Italian ones, the German ones. Me and Me is the best animated / live action TV show to ever exist. You know, I watched it whatever was there. And I feel like this could have had happened here too. Obviously, this is just a speculation in my part, but I do think it would have been nice if there was an attempt to promote this outside of the US. But obviously, they were not going to do that because the whole point was that this movie was supposed to be them breaking into the US. But I'm just saying, it could have been something. JYP, please stop trying to be a part of everything. I don't think JYP, the man himself, being a part of this movie is necessarily a reason for its flaw, but I just don't really like that he was always trying to be a part of everything the Wonder Girls did. Like, he was in the music video for Nobody, for The DJ Is Mine, and I do think that he was in this movie because, first of all, JYP Entertainment was one of the producers of this movie, and also basically they saved money by hiring him and not an actual actor to be their manager. I do think it's funny that Yubin has a line saying that JYP is not their boss. He works for them, and that it actually is the exact opposite. Oh, I feel like I should explain this for those who don't know what I'm talking about. JYP, the man himself, Park Jin-yeon, is in fact the founder of JYP Entertainment, the company that debuted the Wonder Girls, and he is the founder of that. He is generally known nowadays for being extremely cringy. Sweet dreams are made of this. For trying too much to fit into the kids, and also for possibly being a cult leader.
60th birthday, hey, why are we clapping? It's just an ear closer to that.
So that's what you need to know about this guy. G, the Wonder Girls songs just aren't that kid-friendly, and they also suffer from a huge existential crisis. Let's let K-pop be K-pop. This is not a critique per se of the music because I do love the Wonder Girls songs. I literally said I love The DJ Is Mine. I love Like Money. I just think the music being used in this movie itself was questionable for its intended purpose. I said earlier that the Wonder Girls' debut single, Irony, had this very fun mid-2000s Bratz-inspired music video that I think would have done well with tween girls at the time. Then their breakout hit, Tell Me, was this fun electro-pop song that had a music video that could have come out on TV Futura. I also mentioned that it makes sense to me that they were trying to market the Wonder Girls to young girls considering the business decisions being made, but the soundtrack of the movie didn't really help. First of all, I think it's interesting that they decided to make the movie so focused on being about Motown, because I doubt that kids in 2012 knew anything about Motown or the 60s music scene. With that said, the Wonder Girls' biggest hit in the US at this point was Nobody, which was a 60s Motown inspired song, so I guess they decided that retro was their thing in America. Makes sense to me. That's fine. That's cool. You can say that we ain't nothing, but you know the truth, and guess I'm the fool. I'm sorry, I had to. But then the rest of the songs in this movie are just PG versions of generic club pop music that was popular in the early 2010s. Both Like Money and The DJ Is Mine, the main English songs from the movie, just sound like any other pop song with cleaner lyrics. Nothing about them felt like K-pop, and nothing about them set them apart from everything else that was on the radio. You might be thinking, but Joanna, the reason why they don't feel like K-pop is because they are in English. My counter argument to that is go listen to The Feels by Twice. This is the song completely in English that still feels like K-pop. Now you might be thinking, Joanna, it's obvious that they would water down the K-pop vibes in their music marketed towards the Western market so that it would be more digestible to the American audience. This is a fair point, and it's honestly probably what happened. With that said, I think this idea was misguided. First of of all, these songs just sounded like anything else that was playing on the radio at that time, so it was not anything new from what people were already listening to, and they just didn't fit the target audience of the movie. In 2012, there were many boy and girl bands who were doing well in the Western market. I can think of One Direction and Little Mix. Let's use them for example. You know what they had? Bubblegum pop that appealed to girls with lyrics about things like first love and self-love, and not club songs about how they want to be loved like money, no matter how boppy they are. Second of all, I don't think K-pop needed to be washed out to do well in the West. This kind of reminds me of those people who say homophobes don't take queer people seriously because of demisexuals or non-binary people or something like that. Like, obviously no. Homophobes don't take the LGBT community seriously because they are homophobic, not because of queer people themselves. Are you blaming homophobia on gay people? And it's dangerous to think that we'd have to wash out our community to fit better into the standards of what straight cis people want out of us. Like, I think this is harmful. Homophobes are not going to accept us anyway. Okay, I'm sorry for the seemingly unrelated rant right now, but it's the same principle. People who don't like K-pop because they are racist are not going to like K-pop anyway, unless you play them something that they don't know it's K-pop. So it isn't wise to wash out everything that made the Wonder Girls songs unique. It isn't a surprise to me that the song that blew out outside of Korea, that made K-pop be known in the map outside of Asia, was Gangnam Style, because it is an epitome of what K-pop is. And now that we are in a future where K-pop is actually mainstream, we see that there are plenty of groups that are extremely popular between American audiences that haven't washed out all the K-popiness of their music. 8. Neither are the choreographies. A key component of what made the Wonder Girls so popular back in the day were their catchy dances. Everyone and their mother were doing the Tell Me dance in 2007. So again, it's puzzling to me why they would choose to release music with much harder choreo that wouldn't be able to be easily replicated by the children watching, like Gangnam Style was. I hope it's clear that I'm not critiquing the music or the choreographies themselves. I think the music good. I think the choreography is good, but they are not good for their intended purpose, for what they were trying to do. I don't think that they were the right choices for the soundtrack of the movie, nor for the choice of songs to be pushed to the West. Just bad timing overall. The Wonder Girls movie really came out not in the best time. K-pop was in a transitional period. It was beginning to be known outside of Korea and Asian spaces, but still not quite there. Not until July when Gangnam Style happened. I'm sorry for talking about this song so many times. Besides the lineup changes between the girls being the openers for Jonas Brothers and the release of this movie with, Sunmi being replaced by Hitting, it certainly didn't help. At this time, K-pop content wasn't as easily accessible like it is now. Like, it's not every group that had content with subtitles, and so a lot of people just didn't understand what was happening. Lastly, I think the timing within the Western market was also not the best, because as I said, there were plenty of media geared towards children that were made with the same premise of like singing people, singing groups being popular, especially Nickelodeon itself, and those had way better budgets and premises that did way better. Chapter 4. Did this movie kill any chance of an international career to the Wonder Girls? No. Yes, it's complicated. After the movie's release, the Wonder Girls released a version of Like Money featuring Akon. Like, they got Akon to be in the song. And it flopped. It was a terrible flop. It charted in Korea. It sold a little bit in Korea, but it didn't chart anywhere in the US, which was a huge problem because a lot of money was spent to promote the song and the movie itself and the Wonder Girls. So the Wonder Girls went back to Korea. They released Like This, which is a fun song with a music video that had a way smaller budget than the Wonder Girls movie itself. They also released their first ever Japanese album with Japanese versions of their songs. In September of 2012, the girls did an interview with Nick Cannon, who you might remember is the producer of this movie, talking about how they were going to release their American full album the following year, and that they were going to have a TV show that the movie was kind of like a pilot for. Those plans never came to fruition. The main reason was because Sunye, one of the members, went on hiatus in early 2013 because she got married. In the ending of the year, she actually had her first daughter, so good for her. And in mid-2013, so he left the company to go to another agency to pursue an acting career, which is she's still active in acting. This might be the biggest reason, but I also do speculate that JYP had probably given up at this point. First of all, it's pretty well known that at this time JYP Entertainment was going through some financial issues. GOT7 really debuted with a dollar and a dream. And second of all, just all of the efforts that had been put up until now to have an international career by the Wonder Girls had failed. They had not broken into the mainstream like they wished they had. With all this efforts not paying off and half the group not existing anymore, it just didn't make any sense for them to try to continue to push this, you know? But this isn't the failure story that it's sounding like it is. I don't want to make this sound like a failure story. I'm a fan of the Wonder Girls, and I think that they did an important job of trying to do these first steps to break into the US. It didn't work out, but mostly for stupid management reasons, bad timing, and just poor treatment of the girls themselves, who were working all the time. They were flying from the US to Japan to Korea to Asia, other parts of Asia to the US, back to tour and to film this video and to practice and to record music, and like this must have been really exhausting and taxing on them. And it's not like they didn't have any success later. In 2015, the group actually came back, now made of 4 members: Yoon, Yubin, Haering, and Sunmi. Sunmi is back to the group in 2015, and they are now a band. Yes, the Wonder Girls became a band. Yubin on the drums, Yoon on the keyboard, Sunmi on the bass, and Haering on the guitar, which I think is super cool. And they released the full album, which is considered by many people one of the best K-pop albums of all time. My favorite song on it is Baby Don't Play, but there are plenty of really good songs in this album. Check it out if you like 80s synth pop vibes. It is so good. In 2016, they also released Why So Lonely, which I consider one of the best K-pop songs ever. It is so good. And I also love the B-side Sweet and Easy. And then in early 2017, they disbanded with the single Draw Me, which is a really beautiful song, and 10 years of a career of a lot of success in many parts of Asia. They definitely paved the way for many K-pop groups that would try to break into the US again. If you're wondering where everyone is now, well, Sunny ended up having 3 daughters, and then she came back to Korea in 2022, and she became a part of a group that was temporary, a temporary K-pop girl group called Mamado, that was basically made of idols who are moms, which I think is so cool. That was really cool. They had one song that was a bop. Unfortunately, they only released that one song, but it was in fact really good. And then she also released some solo music, so that's really fun. Yubin founded her own entertainment company in 2020, and she released one of my most listened songs in 2020 called Ya Ya Me Time. I listened to the song so much that year. Yoon debuted as a solo artist under the stage name Hatfelt, and she has a lot of really good songs. I particularly really like La Luna and Life Sucks. Life Sucks is really sad, but it's really good. So he is still acting, as I said. She was in Train to Busan. Sunmi, after graduating from college in 2013, went on to have a very successful solo career in South Korea. My favorite song from that time, before she went back to the Wonder Girls, is Full Moon, but my favorite song out of her hits after 2017 is Heroin. I love the song. The show really must go on. And lastly, Haering graduated from college in 2021, and she also got married, and she had a baby in 2020, and she is expecting her 2nd child now, which I think is really cool. So by all accounts, I think all the Wonder Girls are doing pretty well and had pretty successful careers, and they really had a hand on paving the way for K-pop, and I think it's nice for us to remember them, even though this movie really failed. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching this video. As you guys can see, I don't know if you'll notice anything different, but I don't have, my sister's bed is gone from my bedroom. It's not here anymore. But yeah, my room is different now, so I cannot film in front of my big window like I usually did. Can I show you guys my big window? Whee! Yeah, I miss my big window. But yeah, anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you guys soon. Should I sing something? I don't know. I didn't have anything emotional to say at the end of this video. I don't know. Bye-bye. Kisses, kisses. All my girls sitting in a tree. K-I-S-S-I-N-G. Don't you guys agree? All my girls sitting in a tree. K-I-S-S-I-N-G. You have to wonder, right? Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. Bye.